I'm the Dean of the School of Theater, Film, and Television at UCLA. It's a great honor to be back at my alma mater in this role. Now I get to help nurture and develop the next generation of great storytellers. So our vision is a simple one. We think of ourselves as the storytelling school, and we believe that you can tell your stories and do your performances over a multitude of platforms now. And since we have film, television, digital media, animation, all under one roof, and theater, we believe that we can tear down the silos across all of the disciplines, become completely interdisciplinary, and reimagine what entertainment and performing arts education is for the 21st century. And that's what we're doing. It's a very, very exciting time at our school. We have 6 alums in the festival with their films, and we're really proud of them. And it's just a joy and an honor to partner for this second year. Where's Sharon? It's our second annual TFT, UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television. We call it TFT. And TheWrap. It's the second year that we're partnering, and we think we're going to do this for many years to come. And I love Sharon. She's been an amazing partner. And I think we've got a great lineup of guests for you today for this very interesting panel. Without further ado, we've got our first panelist. I hope you're all lined up. I'm going to call you up. Derek Callow. Derek Callow is the director and global head of creative marketing for the Google-owned YouTube based in San Francisco, where he oversees all marketing programs and messaging to the YouTube creator community. Let's welcome Derek. Come on up. Okay. We're going to experiment with our staging here. There goes the microphone. Okay, we're good. Next up, we have my old friend Jay Cohen, who's standing in the back. Jay has more than 25 years of combined business, film, and television experience. He currently is a partner and head of film finance and distribution at the Gersh Agency, one of the Hollywood's oldest and largest talent agencies. And I can attest to the fact that Jay is also a great producer and a wonderful friend. Let's welcome Jay Cohen. Clapping for Jay while I get to the next person. All right, there you go. All right, thank you. All right, my next cue. Mark Hofstatter. Mark is a 15-year veteran of the film industry, and he leads film and television for global crowdfunding platform for Indiegogo. Let's welcome him upstairs. Next up is Cary Murnion, is the director, along with Jonathan Maloft, of Cooties, which had its world premiere this year at Sundance. Let's give him an extra special round of applause. Well done. Well done, Cary. That's fantastic. And next up we have Matt Rhodes. Matt Rhodes is a 20-year entertainment industry veteran, president of Mandalay Vision, a label of Mandalay Pictures. One of his first jobs in the business was as an assistant producer to Scott Rudin, and lived to tell the story. And no, Scott's great. And since that time, he is. No, he's not here, but I did many movies with Scott, so I could attest that he's great. But since that time, Matthew has produced more than 25 films, many of which have world premiered at very prestigious film festivals around the world. Let's welcome him up. Thank you, Matt. Okay. Next up, Alicia Van Couvering's first film as a producer was Lena Dunham's Tiny Furniture. How many people saw Tiny Furniture? If you haven't seen it, you should definitely see it. It's absolutely brilliant. It won the South by Southwest Film Festival in 2010, as well as accolades for the Independent Spirit Awards, Gotham Awards, New York Film Critics Awards, and many other awards. And I also want to say that Alicia's latest film, Joe Swanberg's Happy Christmas, is premiering at Sundance. I saw it last night. It's great. Go see it. Let's welcome Alicia. My back is cute. And last but certainly not least is our very own, the brilliant and visionary Sharon Waxman. Sharon is the founder and CEO and editor-in-chief of TheWrap. She is an award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and a leading authority on the entertainment business and media, and I could attest that she is an extraordinary person. You should all get to know Sharon. So let's give her a big welcome and enjoy the panel. We'll see you after.
Thank you so much, Terry Schwartz. We love working with UCLA. We love working with young filmmakers. We love working with old filmmakers, too. And we love working with the smartest people in the business, so much so that I couldn't resist inviting more people than could fit on the stage. And so, therefore, I am going to get off the stage. Just give you all a brief background on The Wrap. The Wrap is a leading online news organization covering the business of entertainment. I really hope that very soon the day will come I won't need to explain that to people anymore, because we will be 5 years old next week. We are now being read by 7 million people a month. We have magazines, we have events, and we're very much about helping the entertainment industry that is so important to us and so much an important part of our culture, find the business models that would allow it to protect what's so important, which is the IP, the intellectual property, the content that all the people in this room are here working your asses off to create and get in front of the public. And there's no doubt that in the independent film industry, this has been exceedingly challenging over the past decade, in particular over the past 5 years. So let's jump into it and talk about what's going on, because everybody here is trying to figure out not only how to make your movie, because that's hard enough, but how to get it out there to the public. So we titled this panel sort of how to make your movie pop. And we're going to hit a broad range of topics. I want to hear from the panel some of their personal experiences as well as to sort of view the landscape. But I think what I hear a lot is that from people in the business who've been here for a long time is that filmmakers are thinking a lot about how to get their movie made, how to get the money out, how to get it crowdfunded and do it, but they don't think a lot about what they do once they have it. So to that end, I mean, Manola Dargis, a former colleague of mine, had a piece in the last a week ago, Sunday, New York Times, begging filmmakers to stop making so many movies. Now, I don't really think that's going to happen, and certainly not with YouTube, sort of stepping forward and wanting to work more and more with quality content creators. So, but this is going to be a real conversation. This is not for the faint of heart, for sure, this business. And I'm going to throw that right over to you, Jay Cohen, because you know better than anybody. Tell us a little bit about what is the state of the marketplace right now for independent film.
Thank you. The state of the art of the independent film it's so challenging. And Sharon said one thing that is actually accurate, and we tell it to everybody we represent who finances movies, which are there are too many movies being made, and there aren't enough distributors taking them on. So everything you said is accurate. Okay, you're going to make a movie, but how are you going to get it seen, and who's going to see it? There are less buyers in the market overseas. There are more buyers domestically, but because there are so many channels to reach an audience that the distributors in today's market are struggling to figure out how to reach people without spending so much money that everybody loses money because it takes so much to get in the marketplace. So I'm in the middle of negotiating, as Sharon knows, a movie. I had to shut my phone off that we're selling a movie that premiered a couple of days ago called God's Pocket. And the negotiation with the domestic distributors is how much money are you going to spend to release the movie? Which most are saying, well, we really want this as a day and date, and we want to do a campaign to, social networking and Google and everybody, and that requires effort and not money. And it does require some money, but it's much more about how do you reach those people. And that's the hard part about the independent film is the digital landscape, which is a really wonderful opportunity, is still hard to target. It's still hard to find an audience. You have to figure out a way to brand your movie. You have to figure out a way that your movie becomes or breaks out of clutter, which is so difficult to do in today's world. And it's challenging because there's also not a lot of money in that side of it today. That's going to change, as I'm sure you'll agree. At some point, people will really start making money off of it. But as of now, you make an independent movie, and if you're a digital release, you pretty much know that you're most likely losing money.
So I would just ask, Cary, you're here with Cooties. He's the director of film and competition. So I'm curious, how did you approach, you made this movie and you're coming to Sundance. What's your hope for it? It's like, do I need to get a theatrical deal, or did you make this movie with plan A, plan B, plan C in mind?
I think right now we're planning to get a theatrical deal. I think that's what all the goals of the whole producing team is, to get a theatrical deal. I think to start off, I think what I'm kind of focusing on in terms of making stuff is, if you want to get your movie out, quality is the big thing. Like, make a great movie. And for us, we had kind of a good story behind our movie. You know, we had the writers of our movie are Lee Wanell and Ian Brennan. They created Saw and Glee, and that's kind of like, for us, that's like a good kind of combination to make this movie. And so for us, starting off, we knew we had something that would get people interested in.
Well,
our
how did
movie.
they meet? That's like chocolate meets peanut butter.
I know.
Like, what's like, so
They're friends. They're friends, yeah. And Lee always wanted to do something else other than horror, and Ian wanted to kind of break out of Glee. So they said, how can we make a movie together? Let's do this movie. So I think we knew coming in here that we had something unique, and then we hoped that it would break out. And we'll see if that happens.
can we ask? Can I ask what did? And yeah, by the way, like, don't wait for me to ask
I
questions.
was just going to say the one thing he said, which is accurate to an extent, right? Quality sells, but garbage sells if it has a hook. I mean, I sold a movie here 2 years ago that was one of the biggest pieces of shit I've ever seen. And I had 11 offers on it the next day. Right?
You are good.
I mean, let's say there was a movie about, getting a chain letter, and if you didn't respond, you died. So we had a buyer screening. The movie was awful, and we sent everybody a chain letter at the end of the screening. I mean, it was horrible. But quality's great, but a hook is even better.
And hopefully we had both.
It's Jay Cohen keeping it real. Go ahead, Derek. What can you say?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the thing that we think about is the time to start telling the story about the story starts, way before the film is here. And you guys touched on, I was like Saw and Glee. That's the stories behind this are really where we see a huge opportunity to build community around the film. And that's very much at the focus of, digital platforms in general, and very much YouTube, is how do we enable amazing storytellers to be able to build a real community behind their film, before, during, and after.
Do you see? Go ahead, Alicia.
Well, I was going to say, and this is slightly off topic, but I think the general rule I find for social media is a movie exists is not a very good story. There is a movie that you could see is not a very good story, so it's and I feel like that starts especially in the beginning. I mean, this is a different thing, but when people use social media for crowdfunding, often it's like, we're shooting something, and that's an interesting story to the 10 people that are your friends. But I think people, the movies that at all stages, what works is an actual story,
Let's go to the crowdfunding thing, because that has been a real kind of the first big sea change, I think, in economic models on the financing end.
Yeah.
Right, and now we've had a few Sundances already where we see Indiegogo and Kickstarter having lots of films that are in the festival. This year, TheWrap's movie that came off of Kickstarter has screened. That's a big movie. I think they had a $6 million budget, with half of it came from Kickstarter. So I think that's clearly a really good sign. But Mark, address a little bit how that's impacting the creative.
Yeah, I mean,
process.
we've got a lot of films here at Sundance this year ourselves, including.
Can you tell us? Yeah.
Yeah. So Steve James, Oscar-winning director of Hoop Dreams, his new documentary about Roger Ebert, Life Itself, used Indiegogo, raised $153,000 in finishing funds. Dear White People. That's really really a great sort of opposite ends of the spectrum. Here Steve was an Oscar-winning filmmaker trying to engage his crowd, his audience, his Roger Ebert's fans, in finishing funds for his film. And then Justin Simien, who directed Dear White People,
By the way, he was supposed to be on this panel, but he got sick.
very, very unique story. First-time feature filmmaker, just named Variety Director to Watch, and he started going off of social media. He started with a Twitter feed and a Tumblr blog. And he built that, and he built that, and built that. And off of that, he created a concept trailer. And off of that, he created a crowdfunding campaign with Indiegogo. Now, he didn't raise the entirety of his budget. But what he did was he ignited a crowd that said, hey, I like what this is. I want to see this. I mean, the video alone got over 1 million views. And were it not for all of that, there wouldn't be the buzz that the film had coming into Sundance, and then obviously the great reviews that it got later on.
But again, go to brand, Dear White People. All right, I'll give you money. That's a funny title. That's a concept. That's a hook. Everybody gets it.
So, Matt, you come from a traditional producing background, and you're having to kind of figure out. I'll share mine too. That's fine. I'll give mine. And you're having to sort of figure out what's how you make movies and how you make money off movies in this really difficult landscape. It's one thing if you're 23 and you're just out of school and you've got nothing to lose and you can get a bunch of friends together, which is kind of what, I don't know how old Justin is, but he's probably something like that, right?
Yeah, he's in his 20s.
Like early 20s, right? But you actually come from the side of a business where an indie film was a real business. So how are you approaching producing, distributing now?
It was fascinating. My first Sundance was '96, and the business has changed so much. And I think Jay was speaking to it, about 3 times as many distributors and buyers. And so I think in the marketplace right now there may be too many movies, but I think the ones that stand out are the movies that are really unique or have a really unique hook to them. Whether they're really crappy and super commercial, or they're really indie but performance driven, just something really needs to be special about the movie. And what I'm finding is it's coming to this social media, and that marketing your movie is really important. So what's that really one special thing about the movie that you're making, and then how can you take that and get it out to people and find an audience with that? And so,
I mean, doesn't that sort of mean you start with a genre, or you start with a core, like you target a niche, and then that niche is going to show up? Like Dear White People has, like, it's like a hip black movie, right? That people who are both hip and black would probably want to, see that movie.
And white people too.
right, yeah.
I'm saying hip white people
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
right, yeah. I mean, those are 2 different categories. Yeah.
Well, I think it's that, but I also think it's whether it's a performance in the movie, whether it's something special about the movie, whether it's a theme, whether it's a genre. I think there's a lot of different things that you can look at when making a movie, but I think before you make a movie, you need to identify like who's your audience and who's going to want to see this movie, and know what your expectations are before you make a movie. And I think that's one of the most important things. I find so many people make a movie, don't think about it, and then there's really no home for their picture, and people aren't watching it. So if you just take a step back and say, why am I making this picture? Who's my audience for this movie? What's going to be the best thing about this movie that's going to lure in people to say, okay, I
But
want to see
honestly,
this?
doesn't every like film teacher tell you like pursue your passion? You make your movie just for the an audience of one. It's like Quentin Tarantino says that. It's like I'm making my movies for me. Alicia.
Well, I mean, it's hard because I think if you're a filmmaker and you hear, first ask yourself, does anyone want to see this? Like, no, like I think making films,
Talk about Lena making, Tiny Furniture with Lena, right? She was nobody.
Well, yeah,
then.
I mean, I think with Tiny Furniture, it's an interesting story because it's like we didn't think anyone was going to see that movie. It was funny to us, I mean, I think I actually feel like the only thing you can trust is your own taste, and if you want to see it. The litmus test that I use is like, would I actually spend $10 of my own money to see the movie that I'm going to make?
Only $10?
Yeah, would I actually spend $16 of my own money to see this movie? And the answer is like almost always no, even if it's a good piece of business or it could have an audience or it seems like a cool idea. It's like you have to be driven by passion in spite of the fact that like you don't know if anybody is ever going to want to see it. So if I was a filmmaker and the number one question was who wants to see this and does this movie need to exist? No movies need to exist, I think I guess for me that's a tough. I totally get what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing, but it's
No.
Well, talk about Happy
And
Christmas,
I've just
movie
heard
you
that
have
before,
here. Like,
but there's
what's
so
that?
many movies that ultimately, actually wind up going nowhere. And so it's a question you ask, am I doing it for me? I think that's cool too. Am I doing it for myself and just my filmmaker, or, the 3 of us and making something that can really break out? But when you're looking at thousands of movies being made a year, you have to ask yourself a question: how many of those are being seen, and who's really looking at those, and what the
Yeah.
agenda is? Some people are like, I want to make a movie, and I'm okay if one person sees it. And some people are like, I want the world to see it, and they realize at the end, they figure out, oh, I realize what I made, and there's no audience for it. So I agree with you that it comes from a personal point of view and what your passion is. And I also think it's the point of knowing who your audience is or what you want to do with your movie is so ultimately you have a goal, and whether that's, I hope it becomes great, but at the end of the day I'm fine with one person seeing it. That's the passion which I think so many of us are in this room, do something with social media or making movies or making content. It all stems from passion.
But that's
at the
great
end of
if
the day.
Mark finances it through Indiegogo and nobody expects their money back,
Right.
right? But if you're making a movie for one person, your investors lost $2 million,
But I mean,
they're not going to be so happy.
no, I'm not saying you should make movies and not care if anyone sees them. I'm just saying like that the business consideration of, I guess what I'm trying to say is like I have a small issue. I think that the films that have worked the best and have really popped and have really made money were films that didn't necessarily back into an audience. It's not that they didn't consider an audience, and it's certainly not that they didn't care about it, and they didn't, they marketed the shit out of their movie, but they didn't I think if you're just backing into an audience, then you're just repeating what came before, and that's where people lose all their money, is making movies that are just like other movies.
I think there's a very easy balance between the two. Well, maybe it's not easy, but there is a balance between the passion of the filmmaker and then also the understanding that there is a marketplace, there is going to be distribution. And
why shouldn't there be some kind of crowdfunded aspect for distribution? I mean, Indiegogo and Kickstarter are just hear me out, because I'm a fan. And my son's a filmmaker, so he's it's like I want this for him. But I mean, because of those platforms, there's literally hundreds more movies gonna get made because of that. Where are they going to go? We need an Indiegogo Kickstarter for distribution.
So we actually are announcing today partnerships with a number of distribution online distributors, VHX and Yekra, who are self-distribution organizations.
Where's Lucas? He's just writing about this. Our reporter was just writing about this. Thank you.
And so they'll be working with, they're going to be partners of Indiegogo. We'll be working with them, promoting them. They'll be promoting us. People, Indiegogo filmmakers who utilize them will get discounted rates and fees. And
so this is those are like streaming services, essentially?
Yeah, they're basically what you do is you have your own website. It's self-distribution, so you have your own website for your film. And so people...
I'm exhausted already just thinking about this.
It's basically self-marketing, which
Yeah.
is, we're talking about social media. And again, the question is, how do you break out? How does anybody find you? I mean, Wake Up White People, whatever it is called. It's like, okay, that has a hook. Are there any white people here? Sorry.
But
it's that, right? But I mean, okay, I'm one packaging agent at one agency, and there's 7 major agencies. I get 40 finished movies a month to see if I can get distribution. That's me and one person. That's 500 movies a year plus that I pass on because there's absolutely no market for those movies. Right? So the plus and the minus of the movie business, and the inherent problem with the movie business is it's art meets commerce, right? Commerce is everything, and art is everything, right? You want art, you also want to make money, but it's that balance of how do you find the both. Right?
It's also when you make your movie, though, and you're showing it to someone like you, Jay, and walking in and you're tired, you've had a long day, you got to check out the movie, you watch the movie, you think about it.
You're saying I'm tired?
Right, and a producer comes or a group of filmmakers come and they're like, okay, look, here's our plan, using social media, and here's our plan, here's how I want to market it, here's how I want to use our audience. We've got Twitter, we've got the followers, we're using YouTube, here's our audience that we're finding, here's what people are liking about the movie, not liking about the movie. I think that helps influence people to in the business where art meets commerce, to actually take a look at a movie and reconsider it, or take a look at it from a different point of view and say, wow, I think I can do something with this picture.
Right.
So
I was just going to say, there has to be a monetization of what that means, right? So when he's taking a movie on and putting it on Google or YouTube or whatever, their goal is they make money by having 20 trillion people online watching their stuff. So if you're making something that nobody watches, at some point that affects the value of his company and his website. That affects the value of, right? If Sony wants to buy a movie or Fox wants to buy a movie, whatever it is, they might love your movie. But what they're looking at is the opportunity cost of, if I take your movie on and it doesn't make money, I just missed on that movie, right? So it's just it's an interesting balance. And again, it just goes to, as she was saying, make a really great movie that's interesting with the right people.
Right, but this seems to me like, okay, so everything that they're saying here, Derek, sounds to me like opportunity for YouTube. It just seems like it screams YouTube. You have this massive platform with hundreds of millions or a billion people. What did Michelle say? 1 billion people? Yeah, a month, right? And still not the level of quality that you guys aspire to. This is it's kind of like a marriage made in heaven. So, all these people who have movies that they want the world to see, and you have this free platform that needs better content. So, how is YouTube thinking about this? And the amount of video that you guys have taken just keeps inching up. I don't know if you're taking full-length feature films or not, or you're thinking about that. But where is YouTube headed on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think we work with creators globally, and we work with all types of creators, and so it's very interesting when you look at. Let me give an example. You talked about the word quality, and I want to get back to that, because we have, quality is not about production value, or it's about, am I telling the right story that's going to find the right audience? And so we have a lot of quality content on the platform, but we have many different levels of expense when it comes to production, and so when we look at working with all those different types of creators, you will have an amazing storyteller that has very simple production costs. And many of these guys have 100% digital or in many instances 100% YouTube distribution strategy. But you can go through all the way up to a lot of the amazing stories that were here where there is exponentially greater production costs, and Indiegogo has been a part of that. And so in those instances, YouTube is often a part of that distribution strategy because we want people to be able to think about the right mix for their distribution.
But can it be more than marketing? I mean, most people will use it for marketing because there isn't really money of any significance to be made. And by the way, it's not really a knock on YouTube because it's not like there's a lot of other good alternatives either. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if YouTube is going to get the quality content, there has to be a realistic way for the filmmakers to make a living at it.
Well, is that true? Only if YouTube is the exclusive distributor, right? If YouTube is just a part of it, then couldn't it just be monetized with advertising?
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example. So Freddie Wong, huge.
I want YouTube to make all the money.
Freddie Wong, huge YouTube celebrity, over 6 million subscribers, ran 2 very successful crowdfunding campaigns for the first 2 seasons of Video Game High School. He's doing his 3rd season of Video Game High School with us, Indiegogo, and that will launch later this week.
Is that because the budget's bigger now, or because he has big budgets? He's had
he has big budgets. How do you mean?
Well, the other 2 he didn't do on Indiegogo, but
Right.
this one he is. So
Right.
is that because he's,
Well, because
was
we're
Netflix,
stronger platform.
And his second season was Netflix, right?
Well, yeah. So so it started, but the videos originally came out through YouTube, and then later found a place on iTunes and Netflix. Yeah.
That's a great example. And you talked about, we worked with Freddie right from the start, and his first series was filmed 100% in our space in LA. But the great story there is he has built his community through digital and through YouTube. And as he's continued his career, the people that are following him and feel a part of his success, his ups and his downs, he's able to work with them to fund his future initiatives. And so it's a great example of, it's not about the one product that is launched. It's about this guy's found an amazing community, and these guys are part of his career and his growth. And then as he builds that, he's able to tap into those guys. And it's not just tapping into them to milk them for money. A great example we talked about before was Dear White People. Those guys told an amazing story right from when they started to build their social strategy and they put their trailer online. The amazing stuff on their YouTube channel is when these guys had a camera in the car when they were going to try and get funding, and they're like, whoa, we can't obviously take the camera into the meeting, but we're going to keep it on standby, and then they turn the camera back on when they got out of the meeting. So those are great examples where it's part of it's part of a 360 strategy for sure.
But it also requires lightning. He built his own brand, which somehow he was able to do, Freddie, right? And that's how that works. Everybody just can't go out and build a brand and somehow find 6 million subscribers or followers. I mean, Jenna Marbles, she has 25 million people every Wednesday. She's built a brand. She could go make movies.
To use your comment, often many instances when you think about your expenditure, you have money expenditure and you have human resource expenditure. You have time. It's your personal time. Yeah. So you talked before, this stuff may not always cost a lot of money, but it's still an opportunity cost. And these guys have built their amazing careers over time. And so I think, nothing happens instantly, but these guys are proof that if you invest and you have a conversation with your community over time, it pays off.
So, yeah, I would ask Alicia, Matt, Cary, when you're approaching your movies, is that what you guys are thinking about? How am I going to put it together from this variety of, not the financing, but where the movie's going to go, how it's going to make sense, how it's going to correlate to whatever budget you're putting together?
It's funny. It's over my own career, my interest in marketing and sales and audience has grown because I've had the experience of making movies that nobody saw, and I had the experience of making movies that people saw and liked, and the latter is way better. It's way more fun. So and once you start getting a taste of that, you're like, oh, this is really fun. I like, and Joe, working with Joe Swanberg on Drinking Buddies was interesting because that was his experiment kind of to try to what's it like if I really try to make a movie that people love, and we were both like, this is awesome. So I think you start to, I think, it's not actually, until you get close enough to be engaging with an audience, I think it's a practice that you have to build. Like, is the same way that you practice making films and you practice pitching, you practice like, what is the most fun way that I can talk about this movie, you know, in marketing, in social media and all things. You know, if I talk about drinking buddies and I make a beer game, people get very excited and happy. Like, that seems to work. So you learn, you know, I think you've learned how to talk to your audience over time. At least that's been my experience. I don't think it has to be your interest in the very beginning, you know.
And I also think that we don't, like, this whole social media thing, I think some people think there's magic, like, oh, I'll just use it and it'll magically get me a movie deal, or I'll be able to magically get my thing out. And I mean, because you have to put a lot of hard work in this stuff, and you have to make something really great. And, you know, I talk about our movie having the creators of Saw and Glee. You think that would be immediate, like, wow, it's done. It took 3 years to make this movie, from the start to finish. And that was a lot of hard work from everybody involved. No.
Hasn't sold yet. In negotiation.
Yes. But I think that's just a testament. Like, it's not a magic thing, and we're all talking about different people who develop their audiences. It takes time, and you're gonna fail sometimes, and you're gonna like lose money sometimes. But it's gonna have to be something where you put a lot of time and effort into it, and not just think, I'll put on YouTube and get 5 million hits, and people will love it, and I'll make a career out of it. I think that's some of the things that this sort of things kind of make people think will happen. So.
And you know, from my perspective, it's fascinating because I think, you know, we've totally arrived in a new time, and after, well, like 18 years of Sundance for me, like I can literally sit here and say, you know, the world has completely changed, and that all of the different YouTubers that are out there, like I have a unique movie here at Sundance called The Voices, and what's really helpful with this picture for me, if, you know, I'm talking to the YouTubers that are out there, and, you know, asking Shane Dawson and Olga Kay and Kasim G and Joe Nation, saying, hey, can you tweet about this? Can you talk about it? Can you know, do you want to see the movie? Do you want to take a look at it? You know, are you going to be in Sundance? And I think these voices have a huge impact, and I think that not only out there finding movies that they like, or finding ideas that they like, or stories that they like, but I actually think they have a giant voice now. And so it's super exciting, and I think it's really changing social media, how we're looking at, how we're marketing movies. And I don't know if it necessarily impacts distribution, but I think at the end of the day, your movie is going to find its way. But having those voices out there supporting your movie, or taking that one little thing that's special about your picture that they can talk about, you know, those voices, I think, are making a difference.
But, you know, one of the positives of social media is what you just said, which is you can kind of do market research. You can see what people like. You can see what they want. You can see how they want it. You still, at the end of the day, will have to go and make a movie that makes sense, that fits the audience, that works, that people like. Otherwise, you know.
I mean, I'm sorry. I think a lot about, like, putting on a show, and the feeling of, like, how am I, like, what is the, like, what I'm gonna put on, like, a little circus. And at the circus, you're going to watch a movie. So, like, how do I, you know, and if you think about it that way, like, how do I have fun creatively? Like, how do I make this a super fun creative thing and make people feel invited into it? Instead of, how do I shove a hashtag down people's throats? Hashtag movie@movie.film.blogspot. Whatever. It's like, you know, I think people get uncreative just trying to do awareness. And it's like, that doesn't look like a fun circus. I don't believe there's elephants and clowns back there. Looks like there's just more hashtags. You know, that doesn't make a ton of sense.
But it's being smart with what you do. You don't just blast out things into the infinity. It's the same thing with crowdfunding. A lot of people they make the mistake of having their Twitter feeds, and every tweet is about send me money, send me money, send me money. I don't want to send you money. No, tell me why. Tell me why your project is interesting, why it's different, why you're awesome as a person.
Yeah, or like what I will
Make it personal too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, or like tell me this is gonna be a fun party. You know. No.
I think the circus analogy is fantastic myself.
No, thanks. I have to work it out.
I was asked, especially to like Matt and Jay, who've watched sort of the indie business at its height and sort of seen it kind of, and that's when I came into it, and that's why I wrote a book about the indie directors from the 90s who then like are making all the movies today, the Quentins and the David O. Russells and the Paul Thomas Andersons, who are like all working at the big studios now. Because they were making big money for indie companies in the 90s. So now it's like you couldn't be farther from that reality. But what I wonder, and I think about this less, I'm curious your perspective, is like, do you see, after we've been in this like realist period of dislocation for, I'd say, 5-6 years at least, like maybe even 7. Do you feel you're starting to see the contours of a new model that makes sense, that is a viable future for the people in this room? You want to know the people who are applying to UCLA TFT tomorrow, they all want to support themselves. They don't want to live like paupers. Do you see that emerging?
You want to start? You know, I'm coming off as the bad guy. You had the agent come on and be the dick at this room.
I'll take the good guy. I'll go the good generation.
The answer to that is, 5 years from now, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, today, no, you can't make any money. You just can't. There's no monetized value to this. I mean, if you're lucky, you can bring home $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 checks after you make $1 million movie that goes out through whatever digital channel, because if it doesn't find a market, there's just no revenue stream coming.
But Jay, that doesn't mean don't make movies. That means maybe you make a movie and you also have to shoot a commercial.
Well, I'm not saying don't make a movie, but again, let's talk about the yin and yang of the commerce meets art.
Right.
If you don't make a movie that has enough of a budget, you don't get paid.
As
Right?
a producer.
As a producer. So if you're a producer who's making a $80,000 movie, how are you supporting yourself? So that means you have to have a job while you're doing this. The indie, look, I mean, talk about just generic distribution. In the heyday, as you were talking about, all the distributors were privately owned, right? Weinstein owned Miramax. They answered to no one. All these distribution companies answered to no one. And then they all got bought. Right? So now,
Because there was big money.
because there was big money at the time, and so now every indie distributor is owned by a publicly traded conglomerate who wants returns.
Every indie distributor that is left.
The ones that we all hope our movies sell to, right, that are left are owned by conglomerates who want a return on their money. So Searchlight is only allowed to buy so many movies, and they have to be at this level, and the targets are getting very specific and defined. Right? Weinstein wants very specific movies. So if you're not in that model, right? If you look at Focus, right? Focus was this incredible adult art house, incredible marketers, passionate about indie films with the right actors that don't need movie stars, right? Universal didn't have a great year. Focus gets rid of that division, brings in people who like action films. So now Focus wants Stallone and Expendables 4.
But they just bought TheWrap's movie yesterday.
They're going to do 3 a year out of their slate. They'll do 3 movies a year indie. But Zach has a brand. He's commercial.
I mean, there is a lot of money to be made in VOD. We made a lot of money on Drinking Buddies, and we made most of it. We made half of it before we even theatrically premiered.
Can you tell us how much you made? Just
No.
many
millions.
It's useful to.
This is a little too public. I don't get in trouble, but many millions, and we made.
But stars, right?
Right.
A really
But
good
the
indie movie
right,
with
and it's
huge
cast-driven.
stars.
I think VHX is really interesting though, because the problem is, like you're saying, the proportion. You can make money on VHX. You can't. It's just still expensive to make something, to make a movie. What you were talking about, production costs. So proportionately, there's money to be made, but it's just not as much as it costs to actually make it.
Well, let's go back and not talk about money for a minute, because what I think you have an opportunity to do is, if you're not a producer, and it's not about the financier, when you go back to old Hollywood, it was, the studios were betting on talent, and the studios had talent lining the hallways. And, the writers and the actors, and they were, funding all of them and ultimately making and building stars. And I think, with how early social media is right now, and it's not necessarily about the producers and financiers as much as about the talent. So if you've got writers and directors and, and the YouTuber stars that we're talking about right now that are so relevant, they're a voice of a new generation. And so what you can be doing is you've got a director that's doing something, and they can really break out and make something special and unique for a very little bit amount of money. And you're going to be discovered by someone like Jay or your colleagues at your agency and other people and producers that are looking for new talent. And we need new talent, and we need new filmmakers, we need new writers. And so what's exciting about whether it's the YouTubers that are doing comedy or action, or filmmakers that are doing small things and putting them on platforms on the internet, whatever the case may be, I will say I think the industry right now is scouring the internet looking for great new talent. And so it may not be super exciting, as the producer who actually spent all that time putting it together for, this director that gets picked up by Paramount and goes and makes a movie, and the producer's left in the dust, and that happens. Or the financier that invested $50,000 for this, say YouTuber to go make a show. and become super famous. I think there's always the history of spending money and being a producer because you're passionate. That's what you do. But what great talent is being discovered right now, and it's out there. And it's funny, talking to some YouTubers who, really big. And I'm like, hey, do you have a script? Do you want to make a movie? What do you want to do? And they're like, well, I've only been famous for like 2 years. I haven't even had the time to write a script. And so it's a really interesting concept to me. As you're going around, and they're just so new, and the talent is so new. And I think that's what a lot of my friends and I are looking at right now. Is like, how can we find someone really exciting?
And then I was
Yeah.
just saying really quickly, I think
Yeah.
because of the tools that are out there, obviously now, people are shooting on digital, obviously they're crowdfunding their films. The access to capital, the access to the tools to make the films is happening more and more easily. So we are seeing a lot of new filmmakers out there, and I think I always make this analogy. If crowdfunding hadn't been around during the time of Thomas Edison, he wouldn't have had as many patents as he did. But there would have been a whole generation of technological advances that we're getting. Like these last couple of years, we've been getting so many great technological advances because of these tools. And the same thing is happening with filmmaking. And so, yes, there'll be a lot more filmmakers in terms of numbers, but there'll also be, in that pile of large filmmakers, there'll also be a lot of really awesomely talented people.
That's great, and that's a very encouraging sign. I do want to have time for some questions from the audience. I just want to maybe distill a few ideas that what I'm hearing from you guys is think about how you tell the story of the making of your movie before you start making your movie. Use the tools that you can to make that part of your process. Know who your audience is. Make it personal. Make it relevant. Make it specific. And think about being the circus. Okay. I can't rephrase you better than you said it yourself.
It's a terrible one. I have to figure it out. But I mean, one thing I do want to say is I don't think this is off topic, but I feel like it's a common misconception and I kind of said it before. I don't know why it's my new crusade that the making of the movie and the process stuff and the behind the stuff is not the only. That's kind of sometimes becomes the only marketing idea for indie films. And if that's your only idea, I would find another one. Like Saw plus Glee. That's amazing, but it's you can build a new creative thing on top of that instead of the story only. I'm sure the marketing story of that, the most exciting one is what you actually made, not the fact that the guys from Saw plus Glee were buddies, But that's it. That's as exciting as it gets. No, but you could do a short film where you cut everyone on Glee's heads off or something while they're singing. That would be terrible. I love Glee. But I don't know.
I do want to open it up because I know everybody here wants to hear what folks up here. The crowd investing, yeah.
You're talking about the equity crowdfunding is what you're
Equity
talking about.
crowdfunding, yeah.
So long and short, so if everybody doesn't know, so equity crowdfunding is part of the Jobs Act that passed in April 2012. When the bill was being written, Indiegogo was in Washington lending their expertise on the subject and helping craft the bill, not actually in Congress. And then when it was signed by Obama in the Rose Garden, there were Indiegogo campaigners behind him. So we love the idea of equity crowdfunding. It further empowers the filmmaker. Also, we're talking about filmmakers, so we do other things, music, gaming, nonprofit, and technology. But it further empowers the filmmakers to get their films made, then ultimately to have them seen. Title II went into effect in the fall, which means that you can solicit investment from accredited investors publicly. Title III says you'll be able to solicit investment publicly from unaccredited investors, basically, the average person. The rules and regulations for Title III have been written. They're up for public comment, but they will not go into effect until later this year. And until that happens, it's a little bit much the same thing.
It's not happening right now.
Title III will happen this year, but it's not happening right now.
Do you know when?
And that's up to Congress. So, see you in
Read the
2015.
rap. We will tell you.
But isn't slated?
Slated is through accredited
Accredited investors, right. But again, you're asking a question interestingly about equity investing in a movie as opposed to just giving it away, and it's still not even thinking about what's the distribution model of what that movie is. Why would you invest in a movie without knowing how you're going to get the movie distributed?
And a lot of people, a lot of independent films, unfortunately, they don't have a huge return. So the average person won't understand, what they'll expect to get in return.
Well,
We'll
so
educate
it
them.
may end up being that the perks-based crowdfunding is better than.
Well, no, I think it all depends
equity.
on the project. Ultimately, again, I mean, we have to see the rules and regulations as they are finalized. But we love the idea. We're leaning forward on equity crowdfunding, and should it find its way onto Indiegogo, there will be a mixture of perks and equity. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be the topic of our panel next year. Any questions? Yeah, right here.
Yeah, I think the conversation here is great because it's about data, and I think that's insights. We talked before. I think you talked about you don't want to back into an audience, but I think and I agree with that. But I think there's a real opportunity to find an audience for your amazing story, and I think there's a difference there. And that's an amazing thing. The thing we love. I'm a bit of a data geek, and I love it because it empowers. And a big part of YouTube is that we've continuing to make huge investments around data and analytics for our creators, because that puts that power in their hands. Because one of the things that's amazing is so much of the success on YouTube follows the talent, follows the storyteller. And so you can focus on what's my audience telling me. I'm telling small, short stories, short format stories, and I can see, wow, I've got a global audience for this. And that's an amazing thing. And I think understanding that and taking that into not just post-launch, but about how do I think about new stories, how do I take that through? And it's amazing because most of the amazing stuff is happening through our whole third-party ecosystem. They're amazing enterprise. You talked a lot about this. Amazing businesses that are thinking about, wow, I've got this. There's an amazing amount of data online that I could be using to inform decisions and think about investments and find a market for my story, which we're really excited about.
Basically, keywords. I mean, as a director.
I mean, that's a company that's waiting. I think that's waiting to be created. Somebody create a dashboard for
Well,
independent filmmakers.
so there's a
would be
company in
amazing.
LA. It's called Market Share Partners, which they basically have an exclusive to Google's database, and they do all the econometrics, which is primarily successful where it doesn't require so much of subjectivity, but they do econometric studies for Disney, for Mercedes-Benz, and they can tell you, and really the truth on algorithms and econometrics is all about brand and impressions and awareness, but it still doesn't drive you on a subjective basis. You can do all the data that you want. It still doesn't mean they're going to go to see the movie because their friend said, oh, I saw it and it wasn't very good. So your econometrics just went out the window. There's one and very specific natures, such as the faith-based audience, right? Faith-based audience is the exact thing you're talking about. You can do a study with Lutherans in the South, know exactly what they want to see, make the exact movie for them, and they're going to go. Because their pastors, I'm Jewish, sorry, so I don't know what they're actually called, their pastors will go church by church and make their people go, right? So that's where econometrics really kicks in. What's amazing to me, which hasn't happened yet, is when you talk about minority ethnic films, urban films, Latino films, whatever, Indian, Native American Indian, it's like nobody's ever said, here's a perfect target, a demographic that is underserved, and nobody's figured out how to do it.
And I'll say, Mandalay, we did a movie called Soul Surfer, and there's a genre called faith-based mainstream inspirational sports pictures. Came up in a conversation, what's the acronym for that? Came up with that with Sony, and then they said, well, let's do another one. So we have a movie in post right now called The Game Stands Tall, which is again a faith-based mainstream inspirational sports picture, like a Rudy football movie, and like a Blind Side. And so it's fascinating looking at those audiences. So and I'm finding what's interesting is like there's a company called The Audience. Has everyone heard of that marketing company that works with distributors out there?
Yeah.
So, fan of what they're doing is really helping filmmakers that are out there really find an audience for their small movies, find people, with whether actors and find the audience, their talent, the directors, the story, how to focus it. And that's why I actually think just to say media in itself, social media is helping so much, is actually finding audiences for people who are making movies and unsure of it. And I've made many movies over the past few years where I think I know who the audience is, and then am I right or am I wrong? And sometimes you're so close to a movie as the producer director, and you're not really sure who your audience is because you're just making it based on passion. Then ultimately, you find some great people that are out there, and I think it's a great way to be able to find an audience and who that audience is and who's aspiring to see it and why they want to see it, and then share it. Because what's interesting is sometimes when I'm making a movie, I'm actually making a movie like The Voice is right now to go sell. And then there's a whole other process that when I work with the distributor, we're now going to go sell it to the world, right? And I actually think they're two different things. It's sort of like, you know, writing a script to get a director, then you work with the director to rewrite the script to go get an actor, and it's really a process. Just like I think, you know, pre-production, production, and post and editing your movie is, you know, a whole different process. And so along those lines, it's where I think marketing comes, and it's so helpful to know your audience.
And that's the number one thing we tell investors is you're not making a movie for an audience in a weird way. You're making a movie for a distributor who then has to go find your audience. So if you can't sell the distributor, you're never going to find your audience.
We're almost out of time, so I'm going to take one or two more questions, and then we've got to wrap it up. But go ahead.
I mean, again, to use the example of Dear White People, you know, it was so Justin Simien, but he also had his producers, Lena Waithe, working with him. I believe they also had an intern that was working with them on the Twitter feed.
It's viral marketing.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I mean, they just got out there through their Twitter feed and through their Tumblr blog, and then they created this concept trailer that again got 1 million views. It ended up on CNN. It ended up on Huffington Post. They were all over the news. And so obviously, the film premiered a couple of nights ago, and you know they're going to get distribution perhaps before the end of the week. And so I think that's a prime example of a film that utilized. And then and their video again was on YouTube.
One other, I mean, I was going to, the story that's been weaved throughout the week is exactly that. But another great example with probably slightly, definitely lower production costs is an amazing partner on YouTube called Mondo Media, and they've built over time an amazing community on YouTube and on other social platforms. And I've really listened to them, and I've worked very closely with them. They tapped into them to crowdfund one of their latest animation movies, and it was 75 minutes in length. And they thought, interesting, okay, let's think 360 about how we would be distributing this. And they went on YouTube, they split it up into 12 episodes, and then that's obviously advertising funded, and they put that onto the platform, and that further built some momentum around that movie. And then they've launched this onto Google Play and iTunes and Amazon. And so that's a great example where you think about, what do I want to achieve at each stage? How do I build that story around how do I build that story, and how do I build my campaign, and think about the right distribution channel for that.
Fantastic. We are really out of time, so I just want to please ask you all to join me in thanking these amazing panelists for their time. Fantastic. We know that great talent will out. We know that great storytelling is never going to die, and we're here to help you guys figure that out. There are little wrap favors at the door. There, take one on your way out. And please be reading The Wrap and sign up for our newsletters and stay in touch. Thank you all.
Sharon.